Okay, before starting the presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about, because there's a slight change of the program. When the patient comes, we need to know what the heck we're going to do with it. So that's why this meeting started by the recipient area. Most of the time we focus on donor, but it's important to have a look closely at the recipients. So my talk is going to be about patient age, donor quality, and how this impacts the design. Most of our patients who step at the door and want to do something usually will be young patients. And those young patients will want to do something, and most of the time when they step at the door, they want miraculous solution. If you have patients who are 25, 22, they're just coming out of the teen years, so the hairline design that mostly they would like will be a very low hairline design. And we all know that AGA will start depending on family history, occur mid-20, and the severity of it increases directly with age. So there are some statistics that 30% of white men will be affected by age of 30, 50% by age of 50, so 80% by age of 70. So while my slide is not here, I'll continue to talk. So it's important to know that when a patient comes, they really want a solution. And the solution that they want may not be a suitable solution for them in the long term. So what usually I say to patients, what you want today may be a curse tomorrow. So it's important to educate patients in terms of evolution of hair loss. Hair loss evolves with time. So when you are 20, 20 years after 20, you're only going to be 40, and you're still going to be a young man. Most patients will tell you, I don't care now, I want my hair now because now is my youth. But we all know that at 40, we still care about our hair than at 20. So it's important to keep in mind that hair loss will evolve with time. So when you have a patient, you have to be able to educate it in terms of hair loss evolution. On my slide, I had an evolution of hair loss from a doctor who put his pictures from age 3 to age 65. You could see that by age 27, he was completely bald, but if he had wanted to have a hair transplant at that age, he would look unnatural at 60 or 65. So it's important that we keep that in mind, that we don't have, for most part, enough hair in the donor to cover the whole potential balding surface. So we have to talk about potential balding surface. Thank you. So, as I say, you can see on a slide, sorry, it threw me off a little bit, but you can see that the evolution of male pattern baldness, if we take according to Hamilton classification, node 1 in age range is only 5 to 9%. I'll compare different race group. So as you can see, most patients will end up being node 2 to node 4. So that's where really you have the most of the patients. So it's important that patients be aware that they're going to have hair loss that will evolve. There was some study that tried to see how many patients will evolve to node 7. So roughly it went from 3 to 26%, but the most agreed statistics say maybe around 13% of people will end up node 7 by age of 60 or plus. So as I was saying, I put the pictures. This is Dr. Kabakar from California. He put his pictures. You can see that from age 3 to age 27, most patients who come to see you at 24, they'll have, here he has a lot of hair. So most of the patients who come, sometimes they don't have this. And at 27, if he wanted a hairline, he's going to have a hairline there. But look at what happened at 40 and what happened to him at 65. So it's important to keep in mind that hair loss will evolve, and so there is not enough hair in a safe donor to completely fill the entire body surface. So how we manage HEA? You can either do nothing, because most patients don't want to take drugs, don't want to be bothered, then it's acceptable. Not everybody wants to have transplant. Then you can use medications. Finasteride, minoxidil. There's a lot of controversy now about finasteride, but it's not the purpose of this talk. Then you can do hair transplant. Then you can use cosmetic aid. Hair transplant option, you need to evaluate your donor area. You have to have objective criteria. You cannot just pass your hand through someone's scalp and say you are a great candidate. You have to evaluate hair density. You have to evaluate the number of follicular units per square centimeter. You need to evaluate calculated density. You need to evaluate hair mass index, miniaturization, and outline the safe zone. So hair density, how do you measure hair density? There are a lot of tools available, from simple one to complicated one. But you know, if you draw a circle, this is a small Rassmann handheld densitometer. You can, it's 10 millimeters square. If you count the follicular unit inside the circle and you time it by 10, you have roughly an estimated density of this patient. Or you can take this and count everything if you want, or what you can do, you take your dermatoscope, you put it on millimeter paper, so you know exactly the outline, how many square centimeters you have, so you can divide it and count the number and divide it by the factor that you find, and you know how many follicular units you have per square centimeter. It's not just important to have the number of follicular units, but also the makeup of your follicle. You have follicles of 1, follicles of 2s, follicles of 3s, and follicles of 4. Obviously, if someone is going to need just a hairline, so you can get away with a patient with just follicles of 1 and 2, not a lot of 3s, but if someone is going to be a node 6, a node 7, and you really need to make sure that you have enough in terms of coverage, otherwise patient will complain that the result is not thicker enough because you put too many 2s or too many single hairs. So it's important to look at the donor completely and to make sure that you have what's needed to complete the job. It's almost like you want to start building a house, you have to make sure that you have enough brick to complete your project. So it's the same thing when you start doing hair transplant. You need to make sure that your donor is enough for this patient needs. So now, as I say, you calculate the number of follicular units per square centimeter. A dermatoscope, there are plenty. other tools that you can use. You can calculate what we call the calculated density. So it's the number of hair divided by the number of follicular units. Why the calculated density is important? We know that most donor, the average is 2.2 hair per follicle unit. So you need to make sure that you come at least close to that. There are complicated software that will help you, but it's easy just to count the number of hair, and then you count the number of follicle units per square centimeter. So the number of hair divided by the number of follicle units, you have roughly the calculated density. So it gives you an idea how many, what's your average. If your average is 2.1, it's fine, but if your average is 1.1, I mean, the patient has too many single hairs, and he may not be happy in the long run, so probably not to take him as a patient. Not everyone is a candidate for hair transplant, so they need to be at some point, some decision that need to be made and say, okay, we stop there, this is not a candidate for hair transplant. Hair mass index, hair is a cylinder. The coverage is a volume, so if you want to calculate what's the volume or the coverage that you expected, you can use what they call a cross trichometry to calculate the hair mass index. The percentage of miniaturization. It's important to know that as much as people lose their hair on top, some of the people have the same problem in the donor area. So it's important to look at the donor area and evaluate the percentage of miniaturization in the donor. So how you see that, you can take pictures and look at the miniaturization in the donor. Safe zone is important to know. If we harvest outside the safe zone, we may end up in trouble later on, so it's important to know what's the safe zone. So, proper evaluation of a donor area is important. You can use a dermoscope, you can use a densitometer, follioscope, photo finders, trichogram. There are plenty of tools available to evaluate donor. Safe donor in FUE. As we know, most of the study about safe zone were made for strip surgery. So, and when Ankara and Art decided and designed the safe zone, it was mainly for strip. But what we find out, so when we do FUE, we end up harvesting outside of what was called the safe donor area. So it's important to know that there are areas where you can be safe and the area where you have a higher risk of AGA involving the donor area. So patients need to be aware that if a certain number of graft is achieved, that they might lose in the long run some of those hair because they may be affected by hair loss. So this is the pictures showing the safe donor area as known for FUT. But when we do FUE, we end up harvesting hair underneath here and here. This area are area of potential high risk, because if you have a 25 years old patient who come to see you, if you harvest hair here, 10, 20 years down the line, the hair may be lost. So it's important to know that as well. This is the safe zone house. It was defined in textbook, but it was mainly for strip surgery, so I'm not going to dwell into it. So, what are the low risk area? It's important to evaluate age and family history, hair density, miniaturization, pigmentation of the hair around the edge of the node 6, node 7 pattern, and roughly it's 5 to 7 centimeters in height, 2 centimeters above the occipital protuberance. So the safe zone margin is important to outline it before the surgery, so you have an idea of how many you can harvest safely. high risk. Those are the areas that are unpredictable. As we age, we have a tendency to lose hair in the nape. You can lose hair at the border of nose 6, so it's important to know that you have to keep that in mind. So on this picture, put probably what could be the scenario if someone loses hair, depending on how young, how things can go bad or not. So here, you can take the black line and have the biggest safe zone. But I mean, if you take that, if the patient is 40 or 50, it's not a problem. If the patient is 25, you may run into a problem because you may lose all this in the future. So if you harvest 2 centimeters there, that could be a problem down the line. And I've seen some of the patients that operated 10 years ago. I see that the hair transplant that used to look very good, nowadays it doesn't look as good. So it means that the losses continue, and some of the hair that were harvested outside of the traditional safe zone start to miniaturize. So this is a possibility, 10 years. So it's important to know that, so you can just go and score numbers, 4,000 or 5,000 follicles, because if you do that, that means you harvest completely outside of the safe zone. Yes, you may give patients his life back for 2 years, or 1 year, or 10 years, but then it becomes a nightmare for the rest of his life. The height of the hairline is also important. Most patients is not popular. If it was a high hairline, they're not gonna like it. But the reality is, they have to understand that hair loss is a progressive condition. If you want to play safe, you really have to keep a hairline at a decent level. So usually around 7 to 8 centimeters above the eyebrows. So those are things that we see sometimes. This is completely unacceptable to see image like this. When people want to score whatever number they want, this is a distraction completely of the donor area, and this is a catastrophe because this patient, this is the last hair transplant he will ever have. Because people don't understand proper donor management, proper design, and everything that is just flossed on these pictures. It hurt my heart. Hurt the eyes when you look at stuff like that. But this is the reality. So it's not, FUE is a good technique, but in the wrong hands, it becomes a nightmare. And we, as a FUE society, we really have to make sure that we don't see stuff like this. Those are a couple images that I just think that are completely unacceptable. So it's really lacking of basic knowledge and understanding what FUE is all about. So in conclusion, when you plan for surgery, you should not neglect patient age. The donor capability needs to be evaluated properly. And we say 40% of men will reach a normal 3V or greater by age of 59. Over 50% of men will advance beyond node 3, and only 3 or 4% of people will be node 7 by age of 59. So it's important to know that when you deal with patients, family history is important. Can I have a picture of your father at your age, your grandfather? So those are the indications, so it's important. And what you need to understand that it's about the illusion of coverage, so there will never be enough hair in a safe donor to completely fill the entire body surface. So it's important to manage the donor properly, because that's, you can repeat the surgery 1, 2, 3 times. It's better than to try to score a high number at one session. So thank you very much, and we invite all of you next year to Malaga, Spain. So keep up, save the date. It's 26th to 28th of April, 2018.